What is yoga? Yoga is from the root word, the Sanskrit word yuj, Y-U-J, which means to yoke, which means to unite, to yoke, to unite, to bring together. And this is the understanding or the realization eventually. You may not realize it right now. So there's the science of yoga, the practice of yoga, but these things are leading to the realization that your individual soul, the Atman, is part of the universal soul, Brahman. And those two terms can be likened to the analogy of a drop of water in the ocean. So you're the drop, the Atman is a drop of water from the ocean. And so you're part of the ocean, but you're also separate from the ocean, but you came from it and you go back to it. And so it's this vastness that you are part of. So there's a saying too in yoga, and I've heard this, you'll hear this in mantra, Vasudeva Kutumbakam. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Vasudeva Kutumbakam. And that means the whole world is one family. So I love that because that's how I feel. Like I was just saying, looking at the earth and seeing everyone and every living thing is one. The whole earth is one family, which we are one family, right? And in this world, we tend to look at differences instead of similarities. So I encourage you to start looking at similarities and how we can all connect. Okay, so just before we get into a little more of the history and some philosophy, I wanted to go over some simple guidelines that I go over when I start a beginner's class or somebody that's really new to yoga or a teacher training program. First of all, arriving on time to get settled. You don't ever want to practice on a full stomach. If you're going to practice after you've eaten, you have to wait 2 hours because it's going to, number one, physically maybe cause cramps. Number two, all of your energy is going into digestion. Digestion takes a lot of work and time. So if you think about it, sometimes when you eat, you get tired after you eat. So sometimes if you're eating in the afternoon, but you still have work to do, you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't eat, too many carbs or that sugar or whatever is going to make me crash. So just paying attention to how your digestion affects your energy and how certain foods affect your energy. If you can practice with before you eat, do your cleansing techniques. If you do any Ayurvedic techniques like neti pot, tongue scraping, whatever, maybe you don't yet, then brush your teeth. You can drink hot lemon water in the morning, but even if just warm water or even room temperature water, first thing in the morning, it just hydrates your colon, your bowel system, and it'll help you go to the bathroom. So that's another guideline that my teachers gave us is you want to practice after having a bowel movement. So I remember when he taught us this, and I was like, well, I can't just make myself go before I practice at 6 a.m. every morning. However, when we were eating the way we were eating in India and having these practices of going to bed at a certain time and eating at certain times and waking up at certain times, yeah, your body does get in rhythm and you do go first thing in the morning and then you practice yoga. So it all makes sense. If you think about it that way, it's your body getting rid of stuff. And then the yoga process, the asana, is purifying. In Kundalini, the asana is called kriyas. Kriya in Sanskrit means cleansing practice, purifying practice. Shaucha, it's the first niyama, it's the first personal observance. And this is purity of mind, body, and life, thoughts, actions, etc. So we start with the physical, the gross body. And so if you think of shaucha in that way, you're like in Ayurveda, tongue scraping, drinking the lemon water, dry brushing the skin to drain the lymphatic system, showering, all these things are really promoted. And this is, I love when I talk about this stuff because then it reminds me of the first thing my teacher ever said to me, my very first training in orientation. The first thing that came out of his mouth, I think, that I remember was yoga is not exercise. And I knew that, but like the way he said it and the way it hit me in that moment was like, oh, it's so much deeper. I'm so excited. Like I knew because, like I heard the divine calling to go to India and I knew I was there for a reason. It was bigger than exercise, but it just was really impactful. So to remember that, like exercise is just physical, right? It's lifting weights and running and trying to condition the heart and different cool things that you can go down a rabbit hole with, all of that science and funness. However, Ayurveda and yoga, the sister sciences, practice life as a whole. So the whole body, the gross body, the physical body, and the subtle. So starting with the physical and then moving inward. And that's actually how the limbs work as well, the 8 limbs, which we'll go over here momentarily. Okay, so for the food, the other thing is don't eat 2 hours before bed. What I understand is because of digestion. And so digestion takes a lot of energy and a lot of work. So you don't want food to knock you out, because it will, but then you'll actually wake up later for the most part, or you'll have restless sleep. So to have the best sleep, you want your digestion to be done, because then while you're sleeping, you want the detoxification process to continue. So your lymphatic system drains, your mind is restless as well if you go to sleep on a full stomach. I wrote this note down, purifying, just to touch back on that when we practice with an empty stomach, you're able to detox better, because these asanas, some of them are actually massaging your internal organs, such as twists and things. And so it's moving stuff. It's going to drain your lymphatic system and help with digestion and move things along. So if you have food in there, I've done it where I didn't wait long enough, and then you like do a forward fold and you actually get a cramp, and it's awful. So you don't want to do that. And then you want to try to get to bed by 10 p.m. No matter where you are on the planet, your 10 p.m. They've done studies on this. Between 10 and 12, that is the time before midnight that is the deepest part of your sleep. So you're going to get the most restful and the deepest part before midnight. And you've probably noticed, and I have, if you try to make up for that, it's not the same quality of sleep. So if you are up till midnight or 1, maybe your job you have to, because of your job or your life or whatever, or your kid's up sick all night, whatever it is, have you noticed that you try to make up that sleep after midnight? And number one, if you're like me, you can't sleep after the sun comes up anyway. So now you cannot physically make up that sleep. But even if you did, it's not the same quality, and you'll be feeling drained or groggy or mentally out of balance. So that's another practice. I love this one. My teacher said, don't work after sundown. When the sun goes down, that's it. Put your work down. I was like, woo, because I really have a hard time. My energy does not like to work after 3. Now there's certain projects, like right now with my website built, my new, platform, I'm a little bit more excited, a little bit busier. So I am finding like I'm not minding doing some work at night, but your creative work and your really good work, even if it's like soul work on the planet, your volunteer work, your whatever it is, your service work, your whole heart is not going to be in it at that time, and you're not supposed to, because that's that self-care time. So after the sun goes down, just take time to take care of the kids. If you do bath time, book time, take care of yourself, maybe do a restorative practice, something gentle. Don't try to force your mind to work and overtime. You're going to stress out your body. This is the time where, if you can get into this rhythm, eventually is going to be the most restful and restorative for you. And then when you wake up, first thing I want you to do personally, this personal practice of mine is incredible. And this is Wayne Dyer's practice as well. I remember listening to a video of his and I was like, I do that. He says before he even gets out of bed, before he even puts his feet on the floor, he says, thank you. Thank you, God. Insert whatever name you want to use there. Thank you for this life. Thank you for this day. Thank you for the fact that I woke up this morning. Thank you for this breath. And you start that and you start looking around, and then you're like, look over at your child and your dog and your roof over your head and your things in the room, maybe fresh flowers or a note, and you start being grateful for everything. So wake up with a grateful heart, just say thank you upon waking, and then try to just sit quietly and take a few minutes like we've discussed and just meditate right away. If you can slide down to the floor, or if you have a routine where you go to your spot and you do longer meditations, that's fine. But at least honoring a few minutes of silence, of just being with yourself without grabbing the phone. This is a terrible habit. Don't grab the phone and check the time or this and that, or the news. Dear God, no news first thing in the morning, please. Because when you sit in meditation and you just quiet the mind and the body, you'll receive all the news that is important for you that day. And then it'll set the stage for whatever other news or information or work or networking needs to happen. Whatever happens in the rest of the day will be set by you being in alignment with divine source. She's throwing her toy at me again. Oh my gosh. So starting your day with a quiet mind, grateful heart, quiet mouth, like trying to be silent for a little bit in the morning. So if you can practice before caffeine, just acknowledge that, journal about it. You'll notice a difference. Your mind will be different. Oh, it's stimulating. It activates your sympathetic nervous system. It activates the fight or flight. It can stress you out. So it's the opposite of calming. So try to practice before caffeine. And that's all I have on those guidelines. So I wanted to cover briefly the history, the 8 limbs of yoga, and then if possible, the 3 parts of the Om. But I have these documents, supporting documents that I can send you as well. So I'll just try to touch briefly because it's, we have 20 minutes left and I still want to hear from you guys. All right. So let's briefly, I'll just tell you my understanding of the history of yoga. So I feel like it's one of those things with yoga that has not been well documented. I'll give you an example in a moment. It is really hard to pinpoint where exactly it came from. And then all the different branches and the little things that have trickled down. Now, for me, it's taken really years of learning from different teachers and books and my own practice to really put a few things together. So I'll give you the synopsis that I've realized come to know over the years, and that makes the most sense in my mind. So just to break down real quick, there are 6 schools of yoga. I'm going to send you a documentation on this as well. Let's focus on Hatha yoga. Okay. So all of yoga comes from the Vedas, Veda. There's 4 Vedas. They're sacred scriptures written in Sanskrit that is said to be revealed by God. This is divine wisdom. Veda means wisdom and or knowledge. Wisdom of life, Ayurveda, right? So the Vedas are books. There's 4 different books. You can't really get a copy of these. It's kind of like finding the tablets, the original like sacred scriptures, right? They're really, you can't find them, but they're inside the Vedas are stories called the Upanishads. And Mahabharata is one of those. And from the Mahabharata comes out the Bhagavad Gita. That is a book that I usually give my students. And I'm just thinking about if I have any extras. The Bhagavad Gita, it means the song of God. It's a story of God, and it's from the Upanishads. And it's kind of like, don't take this literally, because I really hate to misappropriate. I hate to get the information wrong when it comes to other systems of belief. I'm not going to try to pretend I know everything there is to know, but I believe you can use this analogy loosely that the Bhagavad Gita is like the Bible, sort of. The Hinduism came out of the Upanishads. So the story in the Bhagavad Gita is kind of like their Bible. I'm not saying they use it in the same way. I'm not saying I understand it fully, but the story of the Bhagavad Gita is a philosophy in and of itself, of a philosophy of life within a fictional story. It's pretty cool. But very different than the Bible, but it is still a revealed story within bigger stories. So, all right. So the Vedas. So this is where yoga comes from, is from the Vedas. So down the line somewhere, it is the sutras were pulled out of the Vedas. So the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali that you have, it is said that Patanjali took from the Vedas the sutras that he developed into a system. He may be a sage, or he may be a group of sages or men. We don't exactly know, just like who's the author of the Bible, so there's not perfect facts, but so the sutras come out of the Vedas. From the sutras comes the 8 limbs. So the Vedas, and then the Upanishads are in the Vedas, and then Hinduism, and it is said Buddhism came out of that. And Vedic Vedic traditions actually came before Hinduism. So Hinduism is a little more mythical and different than the Vedic, just the real strict Vedic tradition that they used to do. Anyway, and from there comes the sutras, and then from there, the 8 limbs, which we'll go over in a minute. So Hatha means sun and moon. It's really the physical practice of yoga, but it does incorporate the 8 limbs. So Hatha is not just like gentle or certain series. Classical yoga, such as Shivananda style, Krishnamurti, what are the other ones? There's so many, Jivamukti. These are all classical styles of Hatha. The grandfather of Hatha yoga, it's not Hatha, the THA is ta, it's a soft ta, Hatha, is Krishnamacharya. He is the grandfather of Hatha yoga. So yoga as you know it, as you practice today, most of it comes from Krishnamacharya's lineage. Now, Krishnamacharya and Swami Shivananda. I know you've probably heard of Shivananda. Shivananda has ashrams all over India and in the States. And then Krishnamacharya, they both are said that they learned a sequence of poses, about 21 poses from a Swami up in the Himalayas. And this is what the cool part is. So I'll give you the little bit of lineage, but then you think about it and you're like, that's really cool to know where it comes from. However, does it really matter? So going back to the lineage, Krishnamacharya taught, if you've heard of Pattabhi Jois created the Ashtanga Mysore style that we know of Ashtanga yoga. But what's funny is Ashta actually means 8 and Anga means limb. So Ashtanga really is 8-limbed yoga. But Pattabhi Jois took what he learned from Krishnamacharya, and it is said that he dug back into the sutras and the Vedas and old scriptures and found this sequence that he called the 8-limbed sequence, which is not the 8 limbs that I'm going to teach you, but it's a physical sequence that incorporates the 8 limbs. So, but that's all I'll say on Ashtanga. So Pattabhi Jois, Desikachar, another big name, Iyengar, another big name. You've heard of Iyengar name yoga. They're all students of Krishnamacharya. So going back to Krishnamacharya, the grandfather of Hatha, Shivananda is also said to have been taught by the same Swami. So Shivananda was not Krishnamacharya's student, but they both have the same, like they learned the same thing from the Swami in the Himalayas. Shivananda went on to have disciples such as Satchidananda. Satchidananda is the author of this book that you guys got. He did not write the sutras, Patanjali did. He translated this book to, what these mean, what the sutras mean. Satchidananda is my teacher, Vinod's first teacher. So he first studied with Satchidananda when he was alive. And then he went off to find other teachers. So within that lineage, so he's a direct disciple of Shivananda. And then my teacher learned from him, and then I learned from my teacher. So it doesn't go that far back, honestly. It's because it's really only the history that we know is really about a century old, right? And then Krishnamacharya also learned from the Swami in the Himalayas, and then all of those other teachers that you know of that have brought it to the West and stuff. That's how Hatha was really born. Crazy, huh? So the other 5 schools, I'll just say real quick, is Jnana Yoga, which is the study of yoga. It's the scriptures. Think of a Swami. A Swami in India is, it's not a Vedic priest, and I'm not sure the exact difference, but a Swami takes vows. I've learned from Swamis and known them personally in my life. They take vows just like a priest, where they're not married, they don't own property, they devote their lives to service. They usually have orphanages of their own. They travel with their begging bowl and they'll stay somewhere for room and board. They're not in the life of for profit, right? They're in nonprofits, life of service. That's a Jnana Yogi, that's a Swami, right? So Jnana Yoga is the study of the knowledge, the philosophy. It's like the philosopher of yoga. Okay. So it's not Hatha. Hatha is the physical practice of the limbs, and Jnana is the study of it. But you can combine all these. Okay. It gets a little confusing. Bhakti is my, let's just say, favorite, for lack of a better word, my favorite part of yoga. It's the yoga of devotion, the yoga of love. It's the heart-centered practice of chanting and kirtan and community and prayer and devotion. It's like a religion without religion. So we have Hatha, Jnana, Bhakti, and then there's Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga is the yoga of service. Similar to what I said, like the Swami does. Karma Yoga is just, even if you're a Hatha yoga teacher and you do a free weekly or monthly class, or you do beach cleanups, or you volunteer at a nonprofit, this is your Karma Yoga. What you put out into the universe comes back. Not exactly cause and effect, but every thought, word, and action has a ripple. And those ripples are karmas. And we all have our souls, without going too deep into this, our souls each have karmas to fulfill in this lifetime. And it is my belief that we come here into this human form, into this experience, to fulfill or dissolve our karmas. So Karma Yoga, the yoga of service. And then we have, I remember it being called Kriya Yoga at one point, but Kriya Yoga and Kundalini Yoga are like the same thing. So Kundalini is a different practice. They use Kriyas instead of asana. They have a different language called Gurmukhi. Gurmukhi comes from Sanskrit. It's a derivative of Sanskrit, but it's different. So there's a lot of root words that are the same, but it's a little bit different. Neither one is really a spoken language. It's a revealed language that is used for mantra and words, really for chanting, for mantra. Kundalini, the purpose of Kundalini Yoga is to wake up the dormant energy, the Shakti energy at the base of the spine, and then it swirls up through the Sushumna, the center channel, and it awakens the Kundalini energy. So if you see a Kundalini teacher in the Kundalini lineage, they wear white, they wear a bandana, they wear a head covering, and this is because they don't want the Kundalini energy to escape out of their crown chakra. So back to this. So Kundalini is a school of yoga. And then the last one is Raja. It is the royal yoga. Raja means king or royal. It is the highest yoga. The way I understand it, it is practicing of the 8 limbs. So all of the 8 limbs and really all the yogas. It's kind of the highest yoga of practicing all yoga. Not saying that you have to practice Kundalini this way and Hatha this way and this and that, but it's just the practice of the highest yoga, moving through the 8 limbs to achieve, the highest form of enlightenment that you can. That's Raja. So those are the 6 schools. And then I give you a brief history on Hatha. I wanted to wrap it up real quick with the 8 limbs. We're just going to review them. The 8 limbs of yoga. Ashta means 8. Anga means limbs. Okay. So Ashtanga. And we'll go over pronunciation in another time. Number 1 is Yama. So say Yama. It is not Yama. Because if it was Yama, if you look at the word, if you have the book, it's Yama. There is no line over the A. If there's a line over the A, then it's ah. It's not ah, it's So Yama. Okay, Yama is your social ethics, your restraints. You're already reading the first Yama, ahimsa. Number 2, Niyama. So the I is a short I, it sounds like an E. Niyama are the personal ethics, the internal restraints. These are your personal practices. And then 3, asana. So there's a line over that A. That's why I love this book, asana. And asana, really directly translated, it means to take one's seat. We've turned it into this term. It makes more sense for us to say sitting or posture. Take one's seat comes from the Vedas, meaning to sit at the seat of the guru. Now, the guru can be a person in human form, can be also the highest guru, the really only true guru within the self. So to take one's seat is to be present, to learn. You're ready, you're here, you're present in your body. So asana, when you're doing the postures in triangle pose or downward dog, you're actually present. You're here, you're showing up, you're in full body and mind to learn, right? To take one seat. So you're sitting at the foot of the wisdom of yoga, we'll call it. Now, notice you first have to do the social ethics, treat the world around you right, no lying, cheating, stealing, or harming. And then you turn inward and start really noticing your thoughts, words, actions. So, purity and the self-restraints of discipline and all the things that you do for yourself. And then you move into the asana so that you're doing the physical practice. Now, most of you probably started with asana, most of us, right? So these are all really practiced simultaneously. They don't have to go in this order, but when you do start to understand these different limbs, you do understand why they're in this order. You almost can't practice it fully or get to samadhi without kind of going in this order. However, you are practicing them simultaneously and in conjunction with each other all the time, especially in a full, well-rounded class. Then the next one is, all right, so check out the diacritical marks on this one. Pranayama. The only short A is that last one. Now, it's really hard to say in day-to-day life, so most people are going to say pranayama, but it's pranayama. Pranayama. So pranayama, and then that little dot under the N, well, we'll go into that another time. It just makes the N a little more like a little deeper in the throat. Pranayama. Breath regulation. Okay, that's one way to put it. So when we say pranayama practice, we are practicing breath work. And it is a practice in and of itself. And if you did this in order, if you did it in class, you would want to move your body and get the blood flowing first and wake up the body before you did a pranayama practice. However, it's fine to do a little breathing in the beginning too. So it's not just breath regulation. Prana is life force energy. Yama means restraint. But actually, the way I believe it is translated, the way I've seen it and what I believe to be true is really ayama. So in Sanskrit, when you take, if there's a vowel at the end of the word, like prana, there's an A at the end, and then A in the beginning of ayama, you drop one of the A's. So pranayama is actually life force energy, and then ayama is extension, or it's really like to expand, extension, expansion. So you're expanding your prana. So that is actually the definition I believe is true, is pranayama is expanding of the prana, not just control of the breath. It's really, there is control in there, but you're not just restraining. Oh man, and we're going to have a whole lot of pranayama coming. I love it. So pratyahara is the next one. Pratyahara is internalization of the senses. So if you've ever done yoga nidra or a guided meditation where, like I did in Shavasana today, like relax the right shoulder, the right arm, the right hand, your mind is focusing on one thing at a time. And that's a good example of pratyahara. So you're bringing the senses, you're using the senses outward to eventually bring them inward. So yoga nidra, perfect practice of pratyahara. Okay, dharana, notice that line over the A, and also that D is a little softer than the way I'm saying it. With the H there, it's softer, it's dharana. Okay, dharana is focus or concentration. This is if you're doing a breath meditation and you're breathing, I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out, or you're focusing on your third eye. Or drishti, when you're practicing yoga and you're imagining you see something inside, if your eyes are closed or if you see it on the outside. Dharana is one pointed focus. It's leading you to meditation. So I like to say it that meditation, the way we use meditation in yoga today, the way we say meditation, everybody's like, oh, meditate on it, or do this meditation, or, sit in meditation. It is a word used very loosely that we're using as a verb and a noun. So we're using it as an action and a noun, but the limbs break it down to actually all of these things are preparing you for this. Dharana is not really meditation, but it's preparing you for meditation. Dhyana, the next one, is meditation. So this is maintaining a focus completely in that state of meditation that most of us don't get to most of the time. The practice of getting to this place, we call it meditation. And I say it's a form of meditation. It's really dharana and pratyahara. So those two things are getting you to the state of meditation where it's like, whoa, where did I go? That, that experience. And then samadhi is really enlightenment, complete absorption. This one's hard to explain, but because most of us don't make it there, but you've met these beings where you just feel God exuding from them. They are divine beings, even in their eyes are perfectly clear and they're just full of just joy, presence, and truth. They're not an ego at all. It's really cool. So samadhi is that complete union. It is the goal of yoga. It is that unification of the individual self with the universal self, complete absorption of all that is. the realization of the higher self. You could say it in all of these ways. Samadhi is the highest goal of yoga.